Hello there, welcome back to the channel. We all use our favourite movie, book, game. It's a way of escapism and sometimes a way to escape the harsh realities of what can sometimes seem like a difficult and painful world. War, plague, famine, you name your horseman. A lot of it's happening in the world, and escapism, it's a way into it. It's a way to get away from that. And whatever your chosen medium, there's always something in it that you love and takes you into either a character or race or a faction or whatever. There's also within those universes quite often many copies of the same basic idea. Originally in the books of J.R.R. Tolkien, we have a creature known as an orc, which is what we're going to be discussing in this video. Not specifically just the ones from Tolkien, but how in different mediums you've got different types of orc. You've got primitive orcs, you've got space orcs, you've got super intelligent and advanced orcs. No, you never have those, really. Now, before we get started, please like, share and subscribe and comment down below. What's your thoughts? Which one of these do you really love? We're going to be looking at 3 different interpretations of the concept of an orc from 3 different mediums that all include a race or faction known as orcs. And we're going to start with, as we've already named it, those from the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. These are of course most familiar to people from the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. These orcs are twisted abominations, mockeries possibly, of elves. It's not 100% clear exactly how they were created and brought to life. They are extremely vicious, although a kind of dull creature with a not great amount of intelligence but a lot of ferocity, bound by will to its lord and master in the current setting, being Sauron. The orcs physically are humanoid with a sort of browny green skin, fairly primitive, gross creatures that probably smell, let's face it. They don't look like they'd smell pleasant. They are, despite their aggressiveness and feral nature, very loyal to their creator, however, although there have been some orcs seen to be doing things like farming, even trading with other races on occasion. The orcs, generally, they're not like that. How exactly they reproduce is a little bit hard to figure out. There are allegedly, according to some of the writings of Tolkien, female orcs, but they either look so similar to the male orcs you can't tell them apart, or they stay in caves or huts somewhere rearing the orc children. They are able to breed in very large numbers, and this is a common theme with all the orc races more or less that we're going to be discussing. They can reproduce very rapidly. Whether or not they inherited the blessing of the elves, which was immortality, I personally doubt it, but they're going to be long-lived at least, right? Being descended from elves. And these orcs, again, they're very feral, very dangerous. Also very greedy, it should be pointed out, and very destructive to the natural world around them, albeit very loyal, again, to their creator. That's one faction of orcs. They don't seem to do very well on their own. They're really dangerous in numbers. They're vicious, cannibalistic, basically every form of brutal and savage that you can have, and without their master they don't really survive. They're not a race that create. They're kind of just a race of destruction, a force of nature in a way. And that's the orcs originally created by Tolkien. Of course the literary and movie versions depictions do have a few differences, but generally that's kind of them in a nutshell. Next we'll talk about the orcs of Warhammer, the Warhammer 40k universe specifically. These orcs are very ancient, actually tens of millions of years old. They are descended from a more ancient race of orc known as the Krork, and in basics, as I've covered the orcs many times on this channel, I encourage you to look at those videos. Hopefully I remember to link them. If not, you can find them on my channel. These orcs are technologically sophisticated, albeit still kind of stupid. They are instinctively capable of making advanced technology rather than necessarily being very smart. They are very hard to kill, and they get bigger the longer they live and the harder their lives. The more they fight, the more violence they have. And the bigger they get and the more they multiply, actually the smarter they get, the more of them there are. They are all kind of psychic, which is something we're going to cycle back to with all three races in a moment. And they're able to use this psychic field to manipulate their environment, albeit a little bit. Not very advanced, but they are capable of it. If they think something's going to go faster, collectively, it will. If they think it'll boom more, it'll boom more. It's little things like that, more subtly enhancing the capability of an existing thing, rather than necessarily going, I believe bananas are hand grenades, and suddenly bananas become hand grenades. The Orcs of 40k, though, are renowned for their stupidity. They use their own teeth as currency. They basically run by the rule of the bigger you are, the more in charge you are. And they're a very brutish and savage culture that when they've no one else to fight, they'll fight each other. They're actually a spore-based species. They're fungus, basically. And they reproduce by shedding spores, and they literally grow out of the ground, them and the various different subcategories of orc in amongst their society. The Orcs of 40k, they're dumb, they're barbaric, but we all love them. The green skin menace is never going away. It's been around literally for tens of millions of years, created to fight an ancient war that's long forgotten about the exact details of, but they were integral to its functionality. The last race we'll talk about of orcs are the third race, those from Warcraft. The Orcs of Warcraft, in respective to the main world of Warcraft, which is a planet called Azeroth, which is a sort of proxy of Earth in a lot of ways, where the humans come from. The orcs don't actually come from there. They're aliens that originate on another planet. They naturally evolved, unlike the sort of prior two races, and yeah, they're very advanced, highly noble, very honourable, although can be barbaric and savage. They were once a slave race to ogres, who themselves are descended from an even older race called the Gron. And the orcs can, as I said, be very savage. They can be malicious and cruel and seemingly barbaric from a human perspective, but in reality many orcs are extremely, as I said, noble and honourable warriors and healers and priests and shaman. Well, maybe not priests in the game universe, but they're certainly more complicated than the other two factions. Physically, they're typically brown-skinned. The green-skinned orcs in this universe are actually corrupted. A particular orc warlock called Gul'dan made a demonic pact, basically, and those that drank the blood of the demon got green skin as a byproduct, but also got increased rage, increased strength. They felt more powerful, they became more durable, harder to kill. They became super orcs, but they were slaves to the demon and they didn't realize it. They utterly destroyed their original planet, and then thanks to Gul'dan's magics and those of the demons, they were able to find Azeroth. In fact, many worlds, but Azeroth was the only one they ultimately went to. And they began to corrupt that as well until Gul'dan had his butt kicked. There are many interesting characters, particularly one called Garrosh Hellscream. He actually became the leader of his faction for a while, but was an incredibly, himself at one time, honourable character who became very corrupted, much like Gul'dan, with drunk on power. But it shows that their society is far more complicated than the prior two. They're extremely multifaceted, and there's extremes of both ends of the spectrum with their society. Many of them being very decent, hard-working people, and others being savage and brutish, and others heavily corrupted and power-mad. Much like humans, they just kind of don't want to admit it. They're not quite as indestructible as the Orcs of 40k, but are physically, I would say, more powerful than those of Tolkien's universe, although not potentially immortal. The other thing I want to swing back to with the orc races, they're often seen as kind of magical and often have magical elements. In 40k, that's done with the psychic field and the warp, but it is very limited with them. They have very little primary control over it. Only the weird boys, as they're known, are capable of actually controlling it, and even then, control is relative with those things. So everything with orcs is a bit all over the place in 40k. It's not clear in Tolkien's universe how much magic the orcs are capable of wielding. In fact, magic in the Tolkien universe isn't as well defined. Even the wizards, although they're definitely powerful and can channel great power, they have power within them, they are a magical being, is nowhere near the sort of power levels you see in other franchises, in other universes. And as a result, I don't think the orcs of that universe themselves possess any real magical power. They may be magical creatures conjured by the great and powerful godlike entity that created them, but I don't think they themselves have the majesty and grace and power that comes with the elves. The elves do have an inherent amount of elven magic, limited. The orcs, there's never demonstrated any ability to wield this on any level, so I don't think there's any there. And then go to Warcraft. Again, they are seen as often magical. The traditional form of magic utilized by the Orcs of Warcraft is shamanism, which is mostly healing and spiritual. It's actually a good kind of magic. But many orcs have succumbed to corruption and often utilize the fel. Now, fel magic is your typical demonic magic. It comes from a very bad place and is seen as very withering. The orcs that utilize it are often become physically withered, that they've grown mutations like horns and other such things on their body. It discolors their skin, changes their eyes, various other physical changes are seen, but they do get great power. It's usually the ability to sap life and drain life from other things to make themselves stronger, and destroy is the primary kind of strength of that power. Orcs, however, have been seen to utilize other forms of magic, but those are the two primary ones. Again, the extremes of their culture. They're probably the most magical on this list, whereas the Orcs of 40k, it's not magic. The Warp, although is a demonic realm, and similar to the Orcs of Warcraft, they've made demonic bargains in the past, limitedly. The Orcs of 40k very rarely have any interaction with the demons and the warp-spawned entities of the Warp. So, comparing these three factions, I have my personal favourite. I love all three of these universes. I really do love the Tolkien universe. I find it very in-depth, very well thought out, and quite frankly, hill I'm going to die on here. Up until the recording of this video, there has not been a greater trilogy of movies than Lord of the Rings. Yes, Star Wars is amazing. It's been ruined a little bit in recent years, but the original trilogy still stands as fantastic. However, I do believe, personally, it has been surpassed by the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's a much better, more coherent story. That said, I really love Warhammer, and I really love Warcraft, because I'm sure it's a shock to nobody that I play Warcraft, or at least used to. I don't get the time anymore. And the Orcs of Warcraft, not necessarily my favourite faction within it. Oddly, I'm boring. I play human, usually. I have characters from other factions, but I'm mostly an Alliance player. Come at me in the comments, all you Horde players out there. I used to be Horde. I used to play as a Tauren. I swapped. I flipped factions, and I went to the Alliance, and I kind of just stayed there. And the Orcs aren't part of the Alliance, though they will work with them occasionally. Greater Good, Pandaria, places like that. But yeah, shock to no one, I like Warcraft, and I like the Orcs. I like the story, and all these factions are very engrossed, and very detailed and in depth, and they're great for escapism. They're great to get into. They're great to take you out of your life and put you into the life of someone or something greater, maybe more disgusting than yourself in terms of Tolkien, but certainly as a universe, absolutely fantastic. And the greenskins of Warhammer are just funny. They're kind of stupid. That's another running theme. With the exception of Warcraft, many of the orcs are often seen as primitive, stupid, and humans within Warcraft often see orcs that way. Possibly a reflection of real-life view of orcs from other universes by humans, with those orcs generally actually being kind of stupid. But what is your favourite orc faction? Let me know that down in the comment section below. Is it one from one of these three universes, which I think are the three primary orc races? I'm not going to go out and say who's better, who's greater than the others. In terms of numbers, certainly the greenskins of Warhammer certainly vastly outnumber the others. I'd say probably they're a tie for the other two. Maybe a push Warcraft has a slightly bigger, because they are spread across two worlds. Plus there's Draenor now as well, the second planet from another universe. Storyline. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. But so numerically and technologically they all differ, but they're all basically, they are orcs. They're just different interpretations. Which one is your favourite, or is there an orc from a different universe that you find more intriguing, more involved, better than these maybe? Let me know in the comment section below, and bye bye.